Today, we are breaking down the biggest winners and losers from college football week number 5. I am on sale version of Sam Hartman, and let's jump right into this. If you guys are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. We're going to go through the superstars of the week, then the stars of the week, and then the duds, and then the people who just are kind of stocked down. Let's start talking about our number one guy. I'm transitioning from that really fast because someone kind of requested that because I have long hair right now. But Caleb Elam's-Orr is our first superstar of the week. I do make content like this every single week, so if you guys are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. But there's over 90 of these guys this week. I'm not going to be able to go through, obviously, all of them. There's going to be, I believe, about 40 of them that we're going to be discussing today, but there's over 90, almost 100 of them for this week alone, on top of all the other weeks you get to see over on the Patreon. So go check it out, along with a whole slew of other bonuses for you. But linebacker TCU, Caleb Elam's-Orr is our first superstar of the week. 80 defensive grade, 5 pressures, 8 defensive stops, targeted twice, allowing 2 completions for 16 yards. Did end up still netting a pass breakup with all that. I know TCU lost. It was a close game. This guy still performed very, very well, and I wanted to give credit where credit is due. I don't think wins are the only column that technically matter, and this guy ended up performing well in terms of the pass game, as well as the run defense, and also in terms of coverage as well. So you talk about the pass rush, the run defense, and the coverage. All 3 phases. Very happy to be able to give this guy a shout. Again, the whole entire reason I do this series is because I go through every game that I think is translatable, and I end up looking to see certain guys like Elam's-Orr Alarms-Orr that I end up, writing their name down, seeing if there's some consistency there. And that allows me to be a lot more informed on guys like day 2, day 3, when we end up getting to that point, which we're already there with the day 2 stuff. Again, I don't know when I'm going to be ballsy enough to go 7 rounds, but might be in the relative near future. TJ Quinn, linebacker out of Louisville, is our next superstar of the week. Super excited to see this guy in November in person when he comes to SMU. So, we'll be able to get our eyes on. And this is not the only player from Louisville that will be in this episode. So I do know I have some very, very big Louisville supporters in terms of a certain edge rusher of theirs named Clev Lubin that I am very excited to talk about a little bit later. But for the superstars portion, TJ Quinn is our guy here, 90 defensive grade. So first off, whenever I see a 90 defensive grade, always got to write the name down, because then you end up going back and understanding why in the tape. But he had a 90 coverage grade as well. 5 defensive pressures, a defensive stop, targeted 5 times, allowing 2 completions for 23 yards and 2 interceptions. So 5 pressures and a stop. Already there, you're having a pretty solid game, something that's worth tracking down the line. But then you also get a pair of interceptions. That is definitely a superstar-worthy performance. We'll see if TJ Quinn can keep it up, but for now, he is a superstar of the week. Jeremiah Love, how could I end up forgetting him? He's our next superstar here. He is somebody that I do think has been, with the Damon Claiborne injury at the end of the game this week, which Damon was somebody who's supposed to be added to this, but with the injury, I just can't technically call him a stock-up player. But Jeremiah Love was fantastic. 14 carries, 57 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 missed tackles forced. On top of that, he was targeted 5 times, receiving it 5 times as well. I'm talking about defenders. He had 5 targets, ended up getting 5 receptions for 70 yards and another 2 touchdowns. So altogether, 19 touches, 127 yards, and 4 touchdowns. No, I do not have that up there on my screen. I have it separated into 2 things. I am doing mental math on the fly. But Jeremiah Love still securing himself now as the true top back. There isn't really any debate. I really love Damon Claiborne. I'm just going to say he's one of my guys. Hopefully he gets back to health, because he had some phenomenal plays, including the play I believe got them into overtime. So next is Blake Harrell, defensive interior out of Kansas. A player who I think is going to be really solid. He does have eligibility until 2027. I'm trying my best to give you guys relative ranges on their overall years and such. Just going to be completely honest. If I end up grading a player full time, an actual full eval, by all means, I'm going to understand their experience or relative range. But for the feasibility of this series, looking at every single player's year and everything, that just requires multiple extra steps to make sure that it's you got to look back at the JUCO years for some guys. I want to get you guys this content out in an efficient way. And then obviously, if we start digging a little deeper, I think that's where we can end up talking a little bit more. But Blake Harrell, based on his build, based on his experience, like he is kind of more of a first year starter, going to be somebody who I think is going to be more 2027. But 68 defensive grade, 7 pressures and 5 stops this past week. Huge contributor there, even though Kansas couldn't pull it out over Cincinnati. Still a huge fan of what he's doing. I do like an undersized defensive interior paired up with Al Golden, who is on the Bengals. So Alabama's offensive line needs to be mentioned here. Like every single player on that offensive line balled out. I don't know why PFF. I mean, I do know why. Because to be fair, like Caden Proctor is the hot commodity for people to discuss. So if you do want engagement, it is pretty fair to say, hey, Caden Proctor had an 80 pass blocking grade and 0 pressures allowed, and also is an elite wide receiver all of a sudden. But the entire offensive line did phenomenally well. The right tackle had, I believe, a 93 pass blocking grade. So shout out to him. But the entire Alabama offensive line, everybody but the left guard had 80 plus pass blocking grade and 0 pressures allowed this past week versus Georgia. I think we need to start having a conversation about Georgia as well, because I'm looking back on certain offensive tackles that are even struggling right now. And I'm like, I swear I had them written down like versus Georgia having a good game. Georgia needs to use Elo Modozier more. Just going to put that out there. The Army transfer, I think that guy's getting 8 reps a game. If you're not getting any pass rush, you might as well give credit to some guys or give opportunities to some guys who have a little bit more productivity to them. But regardless, again, 1 pressure allowed by the left guard as well, and he was in the 70s. Like the entire offensive line balled out. Shout out to Alabama in that program. So there you go. Now let's talk about Danny Dennis Sutton. Huge week for him. And unfortunately, we will be mentioning later in this episode. Got to make sure that he's at least listed in here. He's technically not, but we will still be mentioning Drew Aller. I do think that he did have a stock down week, but in terms of, there's some guys who had some really shitty weeks. So I think in terms of the actual stats on paper, if Drew Aller did not throw the interception to Thieneman right there in overtime, the story would have been much different. So that's why I can't put him in this, but it's still worth mentioning, especially right here, because it's the inverse with Danny Dennis Sutton. For both those players, they hadn't faced really anything yet. And then for Danny, we saw a regression since week 1 in terms of pass rush productivity. And then same thing with Drew Aller, like just a lot of inconsistency to start out the year. But for Danny, 79 defensive grades, 7 pressures, 2 stops versus Oregon. And we're going to talk about those Oregon tackles later as well. Like they bullied in the run game. I mean, especially Harkey. We'll talk about him a little bit more. But in terms of the pass blocking, which I think is the true foundation of an offensive tackle, if we're trying to look at them in the light of the NFL, not so pretty. And Danny was a huge reason for that. So again, 7 pressures, 2 defensive stops. And again, just going to mention Drew Aller right here. He should be on stock down, but he is on the actual full stock down list. If you are a Patreon supporter, you would see that. But for this episode, there's a lot of guys who had some really, really poor weeks. And to me, I think it did even more damage rather than Drew Aller in like the biggest moment didn't show up. But for the entire game, it was just more so underwhelming rather than necessarily bad. And I also think Penn State's offensive, or whoever's designing the plays, just doesn't design them well. Let's talk about the rest of the stars of the week. There are going to be 2 of these slides, so we're going to get 20 more dudes who had really good weeks. I actually had 38 guys I wanted to mention, and I cut it down to, I believe, what was that, like 26. I kind of faked it a little bit though, because you guys will see on the next slide, I put 3 guys as like 1. We'll talk about all of them anyways. But first off, Isaiah Glasker, linebacker out of BYU. Shout out to my BYU fans. You guys have been trying to put me on Isaiah Glasker. Did not get through the linebacker class as early as I wanted to, and Glasker is one of them I didn't get to. So we're definitely going to be updating and checking him out. This past week, 75 defensive grade, 2 pressures, 2 stops, targeted 1 time, allowing a completion for 13 yards, but still ended up somehow finding a way to get an interception and a pass breakup. So got to give him a shout there. Then Jason Prevor, defensive back out of Virginia, had a great week as well. 71 defensive grade, a defensive stop, and then targeted 3 times, allowing 1 completion for 34 yards, but 2 interceptions. Again, if you ever get yourself multiple interceptions, you're probably going to be on this list. So great job by Jason. I believe he is the slot corner for them. That's at least what PFF labeled him. I know that a lot of times guys can be a little bit mislabeled. So I always put the defensive back label wherever possible, because also teams don't always use the guys in the best spot. So it's good for us just to understand whether they're corners or else they're more into the defensive back range. But Prince Dorba is next, edge rusher out of ASU. We'll be talking about some other ASU players over the next couple of them, but also we do have some guys to discuss, or I think one guy to discuss down the line. And it's a guy who I really do like to talk about in the positive light, so it sucks to be able to have to talk about him in the negative. But Prince Dorba, edge rusher at ASU, ended up having a 95 defensive grade this past week. 4 pressures, 3 stops, and a forced fumble. Definitely a name that we need to add to the list. Jordan Crook is next, the linebacker out of ASU. 79 defensive grade, but a 90 run defense grade. 2 pressures, 5 defensive stops, and targeted 3 times, allowing 2 completions for 15 yards and a pass breakup. Once again, you do it as a pass rusher, you do it as a run defender, and you do it in coverage. To me, you are going to be listed on this list. Josh Atkins, left tackle out of ASU. So not many offensive linemen will ever get love in this series, if I'm going to be honest, because you're usually facing non-NFL talent most of the time. But I'll always list the tackles who, and especially the guards. If the guards get a 90 plus on pass block, I'm just telling you my basic rules for like whether I want to put someone on there or not. This is where I have to but for tackles, it's 0 pressures allowed. I'll always be able to list that because then if I see a trend, I want to be able to study those players. And then for interior offensive line, it's like the 90 plus in the pass blocking grade. Of course, if you do it in the run blocking grade as well, I'm going to be able to obviously pick up on that and then put you on there as well. But not many guys get to that level. So it's just a much smaller group. It's a much higher threshold. But when it comes to positions like offensive line, I think consistency matters way more than the splash. And so other positions get a little bit more splash than the consistency. Regardless, 91 pass blocking grade and 0 pressures allowed. Kind of that perfect harmony to make it onto this list. Then we have Gunnar Maldonado. Talk about a name, right? Defensive back out of Kansas State. He ended up having an 83 defensive grade, 89 coverage grade, a defensive stop, targeted 3 times, allowing 1 completion for 6 yards and getting an interception and a pass breakup. Love when I get to see the 1-1 and interception and pass breakup column. Huge fan of that. And again, also only targeted 3 times and 2 out of the 3 were big plays. Next, we have Rasheem Biles, a linebacker out of Pittsburgh. I'm a huge fan of the Pittsburgh linebacking core. Just going to be real. I actually listed multiple Pitt linebackers, and even Kyle Lewis did well. Like, Pitt's linebacking core is balling right now. A 90 defensive grade, a 2 pressures, 6 defensive stops, targeted 6 times, allowing 4 completions for 40 yards, but added an interception on there as well. Would have been in the superstars of the week if he did not allow 40 yards. Like, if it was 2 out of 6 for 20 yards interception, I think I might have put him in that superstar territory. But regardless, a fantastic week. Then we got Clev, I think it's Lubin. Might be mispronouncing it. I'm going to be honest. I try my best to just watch an all 22. But, Clev's been phenomenal. You look at the amount of pressures he's generating. It is like somebody who I instantly put on my list. I need to see if I have official measurements for him because there's certain players where it's like, you're much more of a college edge rusher and you're going to be a headache for college tackles. You got to be like Micah Parsons in order to work in the NFL, but I'm not saying that's for Clev. I'm just saying that in general, there's certain guys like Ben Bell, who I really, really like. Might mention him in this. Definitely mention him on the Patreon, but for this episode, I don't believe he is listed here. But regardless, 81 defensive grade, 7 pressures and a stop. 7 pressures is phenomenal. Again, you're pretty much making a presence felt the entire game. Unless you're doing it back-to-back-to-back, which even then, you are literally taking over a drive, you are worth giving praise for. Then we have Emmanuel Henderson Jr., wide receiver out of Kansas. I almost did not include him, but he ended up having 7 targets for 5 receptions, 214 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The reason why I almost didn't include him in this, because there's so many guys, and he did have a drop. I'm not a fan of giving guys like a pedestal when they're not like a primary dude when you do drop a pass, but he had such a good performance that I still had to keep him even when I had to drop essentially 10 different players. So Emmanuel Henderson Jr., amazing performance. Let's not have the drop. So Antoine Raymond is next, a running back out of Rutgers, even though we'll be talking about his quarterback pretty soon. Even though his quarterback, not too bueno, this kid, awesome. 26 carries, 161 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But Almost 1 out of every 2 carries had a missed tackle force with 12 missed tackles forced, tied with, I believe, Ahmad Hardy to have the most in the entire country this past year. So shout out to Antoine Raymond. We'll keep an eye on you because Rutgers has been pumping out good running back talent recently. But we got the final group of guys. You see at the bottom, I found a way to like blend 3 guys into one. I did not have the ability to eliminate any more players from this list, and I did not want to go to 30. Like then I started feeling like, we don't need a 40-minute video here. But Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver out of USC. He's the first one of our tier 2, even though this is the exact same tier as the guys we just talked about before. Page 2, we want to call it that. He ended up having 16 targets, 11 receptions, 151 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's my wide receiver 2 coming into the year. Is going to probably be right there because, unfortunately, there's another player who I really, really like as well in Chris Bell, who is also having a really good week and could have easily been listed as a stock-up player because he as well had over 100 yards and a touchdown this past week. But regardless, Mekhi Lemon, easily a top 3 receiver. There's just no doubt about it. I mean, and he is pretty much 2A, 2B. Like, you're just talking about him, like 2 peas in a pod there with Chris Bell. Regardless, Mekhi Lemon, super excited to have been a fan of him early, and I'm going to continue to be so. Then Luke Altmaier. I almost did not include him on this because I'm a sucker for big-time throws. This week, he had 26 throws, 20 completions, 332 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 picks. Really solid stat line, especially when he ends up having a game-winning drive, essentially, that has a field goal to win it. But 0 big-time throws. 0 turnover-worthy plays, which is, again, another reason why I felt comfortable at least keeping him on here. But he did have 5 carries for 32 yards and a touchdown. He had 2 missed tackles forced on that. But he had 1 target for 1 reception, 3 yards, and a touchdown. So 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving. Got to give the guy credit, especially when his team won by 3 points, or by 2 points, I should say. Next, we have Diego Pavia, quarterback out of Vanderbilt. 34 throws, 26 completions, 321 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, 3 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play, 8 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown, 3 missed tackles forced. So again, not a fan of turnover-worthy plays. That's just a thing for me. But on top of that, getting 83 yards on the ground and a touchdown is just, really, really good performance. Not enough people were really talking about it. I just see like one post from PFF College, and, I think he needs a little bit more than that. So definitely a huge fan of how Diego Pavia handled himself this past week. We'll see if he ends up getting that date with Tate McRae. I'm rooting for him. Obviously, I don't think it's going to happen, but, if he can do it, we can do it. Gives us hope. Inspirational. Remember what I was talking about with the guards? Don't put him on this. I just don't. But Noah McKinney balled out. This is back-to-back weeks with a guard on this list, by the way. So this is just weird territory for me. But he ended up having a 92 pass blocking grade with 0 pressures allowed versus Baylor. That's very hard to do. That is very hard to do. You can end up being carried by maybe the center ends up getting the pressures, or maybe the tackle, if you're double teaming, they end up getting a little bit more of the blame for negative plays. But you got to be locked the fuck in order to get a 90+ grade. That's just not by chance. So got to give him a shout out right there. He's also 330 pounds. I believe it's his first year starting. So I'm very excited to see him be able to grow and develop into something really awesome, and maybe somebody we need to keep our eye out on. Then we have Terayan York, linebacker at Texas A&M. I am not a fan of his game in terms of its translatability to the NFL. Last year, I saw some games where I was just like, whew, this guy looks like he's running in quicksand. But he has games that are awesome. He really does. 83 defensive grade, 4 pressures, 5 stops, targeted 5 times, allowing 4 completions, but only 4 yards, and ended up getting a pass breakup on the 5th. So, really solid performance right there. Again, that's not going to change my mind based on what I've seen. There's just certain tape when you watch it and you're just like, oh, I think there's a certain threshold you have to meet in terms of how bad your negative plays are. You need to have a certain limit on that in order to be able to work in the NFL, because I can guarantee you your NFL bad plays are going to be worse. And it's how can you end up making up for it? I don't think Terayan York at the moment, again, I'm always open to change my mind as more information comes in. Just going to be honest. So far, he's not one. I think there's just good college players who perform well in college and just can't translate to the NFL. And I also think there's some players who don't do that well in college and in certain schemes and end up balling out in the NFL. Love that for them as well. But we'll see what happens with Trey and York. Caden Curry is next. So technically, we also could have included Kenyatta Jackson because, yeah, it's Kenyatta Jackson. He also had 6 pressures this past week. But I thought Caden Curry's performance overall was just stellar. 78 defensive grade, 4 pressures, and 6 stops. He was targeted for 1 time, allowing 5 yards. But, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, do not care about that based on how Ohio State uses their edge rushers. I mean, they ended up having a really good week there versus Washington. To be honest, even the right tackle, Drew Azopardi, I think his name, he still only allowed 1 pressure, and he's somebody who's been like a huge name of interest. So definitely someone also to give some credit to. But Ohio State ended up having a really, really good week. So a lot of love there. PJ Woodland, cornerback out of LSU, is next. He did have a bad penalty that ended up being a pass interference, but if you can look past that, he had a 79 defensive grade with a defensive stop. He was targeted 5 times total, allowing 1 completion for 25 yards. Outside of that, he did have an interception and a pass breakup. This is only his 2nd year. So got to see how he continues to develop, but LSU right now is pretty damn loaded at their corner position. Iowa State also has a corner I really liked in Jontez Williams. This is somebody who I believe was a top 5 or 6 corner for me coming into the year. A little bit on the smaller side, probably going to be an NFL nickel, but very smart. Ends up getting an 82 defensive grade this past week, targeted 6 times, allowing only 2 completions for 20 yards. And once again, you know, I like to see 1-1 in those columns or more, interception and a pass breakup. Then we got Jamel Johnson making a return, cornerback out of NC State. 74 defensive grade, targeted 4 times, allowing 0 completions, 2 pass breakups as well. Then we got to go to the Oregon D-line. Got 3 dudes in here, Bear Alexander, Tatum Tuioti, and Mateo Uiagalelei in a strong performance versus Penn State. And we will be talking about Penn State, some more players from there very soon. But Bear Alexander, 86 defensive grade, top graded player on their defense, 2 pressures, 5 stops. Tatum Tuioti, edge rusher out of Oregon, 75 defensive grade, 5 pressures, and 4 stops. And then Mateo Uiagalelei, big game for me. Like, I was wanting him to be able to succeed. Granted, I don't like Rucci in terms of NFL translatability. And I also think that the left tackle, that's slipping my mind off the top of my head because he's not on this list. But he also, Shelton, he is, to me, a guard in the NFL. So I do still want to see it versus NFL tackles. But if you're going to do it versus these guys, he still did it. I mean, if you're going to be able to do it versus the tackles, you need to do it versus these guys, and he did. So, great performance by all 3 of those defenders. And technically, also, I could have tossed the Eneman in here. He did allow a touchdown earlier in the game and some yards, but, you know, obviously a clutch interception there in OT. Now, let's talk about the duds of the week, starting out with Xavier Chaplin, tackle out of Auburn. Breaks my heart because, you know, somebody who I was like, have that day 2 grade on, but, you know, he's had some struggle weeks this year, and it is a little bit worrisome. 49 pass blocking grade of 5 pressures allowed versus Texas A&M, and Texas A&M has not had the most productive pass rush in the country, so that's what's a little bit worrisome to me. This isn't talking about like Xavier Chaplin going up against Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor. If that happens, like, that is kind of bound to happen, right? But at the same time, even then, even if he ended up having a 49 pass blocking grade and 5 pressures versus Ruben Bain, I would still put him on a stock down list because you're going to go up against a lot of Ruben Bains in the NFL. Love Ruben Bain. I think he's phenomenal. Like, honestly, Jared Verse, when Jared Verse was at 260, where he had a little bit worse movement skills, is kind of a pretty damn good comp for Ruben Bain. That's a whole side topic. However, like Xavier Chaplin, bad performance, 49 pass blocking grade, 5 pressures allowed. This is the other guy I was talking about. You know, we ended up giving a shout out to his running back, Antoine Raymond, earlier in the episode, but Ethan Kaliak-Manis had like 1 week of being really, really good. 34 throws this past week, 21 completions, 249 yards, 2 touchdowns and interception. And you might be like, Alex, that's not like worst of the week territory. Come on. But in a very close game where his running back did a lot of very positive aspects or a lot of positive carrying of the ball. He had 0 big time throws and he had 4 turnover worthy plays. And that's honestly the thing that I care about more than touchdowns, interceptions. Like, I could care less if I'm being completely honest. Like, cool, you delivered a throw that you needed to deliver. Congrats. What can set you apart are the big time throws. And yes, that is something that I do always worry about is, PFF, whoever's grading the game has to declare that a throw is big time throw or turnover worthy play. But at the same time, when it's a 0-4 split, even if it's a 1-3 split, and I'm saying he gets a +1 and a -1, a +1 in the good, a -1 in the bad. It's still worth mentioning because the game was that close and the running back performed that well. Had 4 carries for 10 yards as well. But, again, he's flashed, but it is definitely worth noting when you end up losing a close game and your running back did such a good job. But technically tossing Drew Aller into this list. He is on the full edition that is over 90 players long. Again, feel free to go check that out over on the Patreon. It does include my big board. It does include every single player I have analysis on. And it also does include some extended videos for the positional rankings where I get to talk about a scouting report game for each of those players. But I digress. Looking at the guys who are the rest of the stock down, CJ Fight. I love his dad. He ends up DMing me all the time. Like, really, I love when dads are like involved. I'm forgetting who the tight end. I think it's I'm forgetting which tight end it is, but there's one that was transferring this offseason, and he was just such a nice guy. I think it was Jack Endery's dad. So shout out to Mr. Endries, but like really, really nice guy. Ended up also talking about the character of some other players as well and lifting them up. Like, it was just great to see. And it's probably my favorite thing about this is the interactions I get with people, whether it's as big of a name as Trevor Sikkema or it's as personal as someone's dad talking to me about their son's game. Like, that's the best part of it. And then of course me talking with you guys as well. Like, it's like, that's why I do this. I hate to say it. Do you think I want to be doing spreadsheets all day? I love spreadsheets, but not that much. Like, I don't want to be going through every single game, finding all these little details. But, for me, I hold myself to that standard. I know you guys do as well. And I want to try to deliver on that. And it allows me to open up these opportunities where, like, now I understand a lot more about CJ because I was digging deeper, watching some players, and I'm like, who is this guy? So, small side note there, but CJ did have a pretty bad week. He had a great defensive stop. His dad ended up tagging me in it, but outside of that, he did not produce a single pressure this week, had a 54 defensive grade. For a player who is a fringe day 2, day 3 projected player, you need to show up a little bit more. Thank God ASU did not lose. Otherwise, it would be a much bigger issue. Anthony Lucas is next, edge rusher out of USC. This guy's been on a tear recently. However, this past week, he ended up having a 53 defensive grade, 0 pressures, 0 stops. I mean, this guy was getting 7 pressures, getting up there in the 40-plus percentile in true pass rush win rate, and then ends up having a game where he has 0 pressures, 0 stops. And it's not like he had 3 pass rushing reps. No, this is a full workload for this guy. Definitely confusing. Like, I wonder if it's injury related because I've seen some clips of him. He's a very fun edge rusher. And so we'll have to be able to dig into the tape when we get some USC defensive tape. Keaton Thomas is next, friend of the show. I will be uploading onto the Patreon the interview I had with him. He and we technically are still on talking terms, but the communications died out. So, if it ends up picking up, then maybe I'll end up putting it out on the show. Like, for me, I want to do my best to be able to give guys as much exposure as possible. And for Keaton, he seems like a genuine guy, but at the same time, I'm going to end up giving my Patreon supporters that bonus content if the connection is not super strong. Because again, that's my brand as well that I'm blending in with that. So, Keaton, you're always welcome to be able to re-spark the connection, but I'm still excited to be able to give some people who support the show that opportunity to watch it. But next we got Demetrius Crownover, tackle out of Texas A&M, somebody who I ended up really liking some of the measurables, but for me, definitely did not like certain aspects of his game. He had a 35 pass blocking grade and 3 pressures allowed. 3 pressures, not the biggest deal in the world, but the 35 pass blocking grade, it's a consistency issue of consistently losing those reps. And not a fan of that, even though they won. But Garrett Nussmeier, That's the next player we're going to talk about. And yes, Drew Aller could be tossed in here. There's a lot of quarterbacks that could have been tossed in here. But Garrett Nussmeier is a bigger discussion because this past week he had 34 throws, 21 completions, 197 yards, a touchdown and interception, 2 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays, 2 carries for -1 yards. But I know there's some like core issues he's dealing with. The problem is the processing. And in the NFL, plays don't always go exactly according to plan. And you need to be able to extend plays and make the right decision when you do. And some guys like to do the arm punts. I understand. You see a guy going down the field and like the play is overextended, just YOLO it. And, if it gets picked off, obviously that sucks. But, you still essentially punted it to the defense. He's throwing it into double coverage when they're 5 to 10 yards away. And this is not the first week. Florida obviously had a pretty ugly interception there as well. It's starting to become a little bit too frequent to ignore. And y'all know me, I had him at like quarterback 15 coming into the year. So of all people, like this more so justifies my initial gut reaction. I boosted him up noticeably because I do think even though he's had those issues, I think his processing, given the fact that he does have that like core injury, has made him a lot more viable of an option to the professional level. But this issue is just continuing to show up. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's not okay that when things don't go right, you make it worse and then continue to let it continue making things worse. So definitely a big question mark there for Nussmeier. We got to see him bounce back. And once again, if he is not healthy and the core strength or the core injury is limiting his game to that degree, I love that you have him playing and trying to do his best. But if it is hurting your team, that is a coaching issue. Do not put an injured player in that should not be playing and is hurting your chance to win. I get it. Nuss has number 18. He's the leader of the team. He's the captain. But at the same time, you are hurting yourself, and then you're making Garrett look like a fool. And Garrett is also responsible for making the decisions, like throwing it into a certain area where he needs more velocity, i.e. a healthier core. Like you need to have self-awareness. But at the same time, there's also an aspect that is not Garrett Nussmeier in that equation. And I think we put a little too much on him for that. And that's coming from, again, me, who is literally talking about Garrett Nussmeier being one of the top 12 guys in terms of stock down this week. But let's continue on. Big Dom Orange out of Iowa State. Love him to death. Someone who I've included as like a late first and early second. This past week, a 50 defensive grade and only a pressure. For somebody who is obviously being misutilized a little bit by Iowa State, they're using him like way too much all over the offensive line, or defensive line, excuse me. Like I do see the production slipping a little bit, but this is a bit far. Obviously this is somebody who should have like the high enough floor to be consistently in like the top 5 of his team weekly, and not getting a single defensive stop is a bit worrisome. Dalen Everett is next. Could have tossed in Damani Jackson as well, because Damani had a pretty struggle bus week, but Dalen Everett, corner out of Georgia. I have him listed as an early day 3 player right now based on like what I was thinking of him coming into the year, and based on his play that is like really solidifying right now, if not maybe slipping to a pure day 3 grade. 54 defensive grade, a defensive stop, targeted 4 times, allowing 4 completions for 49 yards and a touchdown in a very narrow loss to Alabama. You have to just ask yourself, like, could one of those plays been a pass breakup or an interception, and then the game's completely different, right? So obviously from a player that some people thought was like first round grade and had them in the top 3, top 5, I think this game is one of the ones that you needed to see him be a little bit more effective, or at least have something positive. A defensive stop to me does not do jack shit as a corner when you're not performing in the main role that we want you to as a corner. So Nick Singleton's next. So this is, again, I was debating between, I should have honestly just put Drew Aller and then put the Oregon tackles, kind of the way I did Oregon defensive line. But Nick Singleton, I think, had an even worse game. Just going to put that out there. 11 carries, 21 yards, 3 missed tackles forced. 4 targets or 4 throws for 3. 4 targets for 3 receptions and 29 yards as well. So grand total, 14 touches and 50 yards. And then again, on the ground, we're not even talking about 2 yards a carry. Hate to say it. I mean, you had Donko starting there, Vega. I mean, they had the whole offensive line. It's not like there's like bums everywhere. This is a high tier college, experienced offensive line. And you're not able to generate 2 yards per carry in a very close loss. And yeah, Drew should have thrown over 200 yards. Drew should have not thrown that bullshit pick. He should have, because it was, I believe, a double wheel. He should have ended up throwing it to the running back. He has the arm strength to do it. I don't know what the hell he did. He deserves a lot of flack. He's out of the first round for me. Just going to put it there. Or maybe he's like late first in terms of the tools. But the biggest thing for Drew Aller was looking at year-over-year progression. All of a sudden, we've seen him take a 1.5-year regression. And this is one of the 2 biggest games of the entire year. Now, if he has a red-hot end of the year, I can guarantee your ass that we're going to pretend like this didn't happen. Because that's just sports, all right? Like, we are so focused on what you're doing for me now that we forget what you've done. But at the same time, this is something that's going to leave a little bit of a scar. Watching him perform in overtime and then just underperform. And I believe he hasn't beat a top 10 team yet. So there's some big issues there. Definitely worth a lot of concern. But people were talking about Nick Singleton as the best running back in the draft. Now, I deserve some flack because I put some guys in certain positions that maybe they shouldn't be in. Of course, I'm being honest when I'm doing that, and then you learn from your mistakes. Jonah Coleman, so happy he's healthy. Did a really solid job. I don't know why he can't make a single guy miss. Like, he has 1 missed tackle force per game. You could have 1 billion yards on 1,000 touches and 25,000 touchdowns. He'll still have 1 or 2 missed tackles forced the entire game. I'm like, what the hell, man? But that's a conversation for another day. Nick Singleton, I've been very adamant on my stance on him. And it doesn't feel great to be validated, but it also is like, okay, I'm not that much of a dumbass when it comes to running back evals, because Nick Singleton just needs to be put in the right system. You think about, the Titans, the way that they used to run. Well, technically now you can send him to the Patriots, where you can end up having Vrabel utilizing him like a Derrick Henry if you want to do that. Because right now Singleton's like day 3, and then you also look over where you can use him like Pacheco if you want to use him like that, or more importantly, send him to the Ravens where you can use him like Derrick Henry is right now. So he's just very a north-south runner, but I had to say it. This is a big game, and he didn't show up. Big game. I also said this shouldn't be a 40-minute episode, and it's becoming a 40-minute episode. Alex Harkey, Isaiah World are the last guys who are on stock down. Alex Harkey, 47, pass blocking grade, 4 pressures allowed. Dude's a mauler in the run game. Dude's balling the fuck out. And he has like 32.5-inch arms. A lot of people think he should play at guard in the NFL, and the arm length definitely makes you think that he should. However, I want to counter it by saying this. You'll see it at Texas State, where he had to fill in for Talik Lockett. He does not look comfortable on the inside. So this might end up being one of those situations where it's like, ooh, you might just be someone who has to stay in college to be productive. It's a weird thing to say, but if you're too uncomfortable to play guard and you don't have the length to play tackle, and you're showing up, or you're not showing up in the big moments, to where, Caleb Tiernan has those games versus Ohio State last year where he's able to handle guys with much bigger arms. Like, if you're not able to do that, there's a chance that college might just be the area where you would thrive, not the NFL. But Isaiah World as well, 42 pass blocking grade, so worse consistency, 3 pressures allowed as well. We already talked about the 7 pressures for Danny Dennis-Sutton. It's not like 1-to-1 sent to the tackles as it is the edge rushers, but again, this is a big game for them in terms of the pass blocking that they did not show up for, and that is a big red flag for me. I want to dig into the All-22 just to break it down a bit more, but this is 100% going to be going into their evals, and this week their grades will be updated because, again, this is a huge game for Oregon and Penn State, and could have given a shout out to Dante Moore. I didn't see like the yardage necessarily being on the level to where I think it was, I just think that he had a good game, was in the stock up list, but for the video, again, we already cut it down from 38 down to, I think, like 24 or 26. But that's me, the video. I said it wasn't going to be 40 minutes, and I think it might be like 39, but it's probably going to be like 40. But love you anyways. Thank you again for supporting the show and enjoying an extended version of this. See you later. Peace.